Hello, my name is METİN Arıdaşır. This is 171st part of explanation of my theory. According to my theory and my formulas, no explanation, white dwarf, according to my theory. Before explaining the white dwarf star's mechanism, I will tell some of my theoretical thoughts. 1. As I told you before, there are two types of electron motion forms and there are two types of light. 2. Free electron motion forms are unique sources of successive waves and successive waves type of light. Whether they are at rest or in motion, this is not important, they produce and propagate successive waves through eternity. Free electron motion forms are the sources of all continuous spectrums. All living stars have plenty of free electron motion forms. All normal hot stars are sun-type stars. All living stars have plenty of free electron motion forms. And most common wavelength-size free electron motion form in our universes is 91.155 nanometer wavelength-size free electron motion form. By the way, all living stars have plenty of single-proton hydrogen and proton-bound electron motion form of hydrogen doesn't force to shrink its wavelength size by 1 proton, so its wavelength is 91.155 nanometer also. Free electron motion forms are unique sources of heat, temperature, color, even gravity and attraction. When a hot star becomes absolute cold, it must lose all of its free electron motion forms, then it must lose attraction ability. 3. Proton-bound electron motion forms are passive sources of single-wave pulse-type light. They need free electron motion forms effective successive waves effects to produce the single-wave pulse. If there were no free electron motion forms and their successive waves, there wouldn't be any kinds of light, there wouldn't be temperature and heat and life, even there wouldn't be attractive force and gravity. In this case, in spite of they don't lose their energies in there with much more proton atoms, they will be in absolute cold atoms without free electron motion forms, successive waves effects. Yes. 4. Now, therefore, a white dwarf star must be a star that lost most of its free electron motion forms. There are two processes make a hot star become a white dwarf star than dark dwarf star. A. Population of free electron motion forms decreasing by connecting with much more multiple proton atom as oxygen and carbon, in first step helium, in nuclear transmutation. Again, A. Population of free electron motion forms decreasing by connecting with much more multi-proton atom as oxygen and carbon in first step helium in nuclear transmutation. As I told you before, there is one proton-bound electron motion form for each proton. One electron per proton in an atom. This is the case according to my theory and my formulas. It has nothing to do with Pauli exclusion principle. This is my principle, my theoretical principle. Yes. As I told you before, there is one p proton-bound electron motion form for each proton. And as increasing the proton number in an atom, increasing number of free electron motion forms will make joint motion with protons. This means the hot star will lose most of its free electron motion forms. Of course, proton-bound electron motion forms can be free then, but for this, they need successive waves of free electron motion forms mainly, again. B. Most of newly proton-connected electron motion forms, while making joint motion with protons, will be forced to shrink their wavelength and volume sizes. Smallest proton-bound electron motion form's wavelength will shrink inversely proportional to squared number of proton. This means point energies and point masses of proton-bound electron motion forms will increase, say in oxygen and in carbon, but total atom volume sizes per electron motion form will decrease. This is the reason of being a dwarf for a star. This is the reason of shrink a normal star to a white dwarf. While shrinking, newly proton-connected electron motion forms will totally pour out. While shrinking, newly proton-connected electron motion forms will totally pour out and push out single wave pulses. Not only these proton-bound electron motion forms do that. By the effect of each added proton to be oxygen or carbon, say, their constituent parts, electron-like motion forms will shrink and then will push out single wave pulses also. Totally produced, poured out, push out single wave pulses make outer shell of star expand and make this star a red giant. This is my explanation of helium shell flash and planetary nebulae. Nebulae. Yes. Then eventually a hot star shrinks and becomes cold. Accepted physics theories try to explain white dwarf fact with balance of gravitational collapse and electron degeneracy pressure. Accepted physics theories try to explain white dwarf fact with balance between gravitational collapsing and electron degeneracy pressure. But this way is wrong. Yes. A few words and number more. I remind you, smallest electron motion forms, proton-bound electron motion forms, energy and wavelength formula, while shrinking, okay. Then mass formula, mass increasing point mass, point energy. Okay, and point mass, point energy, but in this context, I tell you speed of light, direction, mass, point mass, and speed of light, direction, point energy. Okay? Yes, yes. I don't want to confuse your mind now. I account, yes, single wave pulse energy between hydrogen and helium is 55.31 10 to the minus 19 joule. Okay, from hydrogen to helium, single wave pulse. I have computed, and it's from, say, from helium to oxygen shrinking. While shrinking, push out a single wave pulse energy is 5,487.63 10 to the minus 19 joule. Okay, and this is the rate when yes, from helium, yes, this is energy. Okay, I don't want to confuse now. I will explain these numbers and formulas, my formulas, next. Yes. Have a good evening. See you later.